It's a Gundam!
Super Draco here, and welcome to It's a Gunpla, the poorly thought out titled show where I build model kits. So today we're doing something that is not Gundam. This is Hasegawa's 1-72 combat mecha Xabungle heavy weapons version. That's a mouthful, but regardless. So this is Xabungle from the anime combat mecha Xabungle. Now, I gotta put a little perspective on this before we get into this. Xabungle is an anime, I believe, from the 80s. Well, let's actually look it up. Not like we got much else to do while the video goes. But Xabungle, I first got introduced to it through Super Robot Wars Alpha Guided. Xabungle aired from 1982 to 1983. See, it was directed by Yoshiyuki Tomino, the director of Mobile Suit Gundam. And the mecha designs were done by Kunio Okawara, who also does the mecha designs for Gundam. Well, that answers why I liked it so much. So, if you're not familiar, Super Robot Wars is a video game series in which various mecha anime cross over in an epic thing, except it has sort of a pseudo SD style. It kind of alternates between SD and regular art depending on what's going on. It's a turn-based strategy game. I actually enjoy it a lot. Super Robot Wars 30, there is an official English version on Steam. So if you have a PC and you like giant robots like I do, I'd say go download it and have fun. It actually has a fairly interesting plot. It doesn't have Xabungle in it this go around, but has other things, including Gridman. Anyway, I'm not getting paid for that advertisement, so we'll continue talking about the model. Now, you'll notice I'm frequently using my nippers to cut pieces I missed off. This kit copies Bandai's underchanneling that they're doing in their newer kits. But unlike Bandai, who they actually put a note that there's an undergate in the instructions, it just doesn't mention it, and some of them are not super obvious until you've got the parts off the sprue. And that's a running problem with this. Honestly, this build is one of the few where I'm going to say I hated this build. I'm not entirely satisfied with the product because I had to use glue and whatnot to make it function. I'll talk about it in detail in my review short, or in less detail in my review short. But yeah, this is not a good build. And for a mecha that I'm so fond of, that kind of hurts deep in my soul that I did not enjoy the build. But I will try to talk about positives and negatives as we go. But yeah, in Alpha Gaiden, basically, there was like a machine that created a wave that sent all the super robots into the future. And in this future, they encounter Xabungle, and I also believe it was also the future that Gundam X was taking place in. And something else was there, too. Anyway, so this is going to be a longer video because I decided to get the whole right leg into one part. I don't think the left leg video will be near as long because, well, we're doing it all again, just mirrored. Now, as I'm going, I'm frequently making sure the articulation is proper because the instruction manual for this is not very good. First off, it's my number one pet peeve. It is a leafleted instructions, a fold out or a folded leaflet or whatever you want to call it. And that's one of my big pet peeves, as opposed to because they cheaped out. Because really, it's using the same amount of paper as a booklet. It just, as a fold out, they don't have to cut it and staple it. So they're pinching pennies when it's not really going to make a difference on anything. So anyway, Xabungle. Xabungle was an interesting mecha. It was a transforming mecha. It started out as a car pulling a trailer. And then when the combination sequence is initiated, the car and the trailer transform into flying vehicles, locked together, the trailer becoming the legs, and the car becoming the torso, head, and arms. And then the trailer's wings are just hanging on the legs to act as stabilizers, and the actual wings end up on its back also as stabilizers, because it has thrusters so it can jump and hover. It's an Okawara mech design, so obviously a lot of thought went into it. Now the show, I don't know where you can watch it legally. Now, I have seen the subtitled version. Most of the episodes are on YouTube, but there are a few episodes missing. It is a 1980s anime, so there is questionable content, including several scenes of strange nippleless breasts, among other things, as well as graphic violence, so that's your content warning. But it was a different time, and qualms about the weird, pointless nudity aside, it was actually a very enjoyable series. So I'm probably going to alternate in talking about the build, talking about the TV series and whatnot. Just unfortunately, we're going to be we're going to dance to the whims of the ADD on this one. Now, I will say, this build did some things I've never seen before, at least in a kit this size. Some of it for the better, some of it for the detriment. Now, right here, this is interesting. The tires for the various wheels from its vehicle form are all multiple pieces assembled together, and I'm going to hold it closer to the camera eventually, but there's even treading molded onto the tire and goes along with the build, and you can see the focus on it, and that's impressive. Which is why some of the downsides of this are all the more hateful, I think is a good word. Because it does a lot of unique and impressive things that I appreciate. So now we're going to move on to assembling the leg. Or the leg itself. Okay. So this design is very strange with how the leg mounts together. Now, it works a lot better than the arms because I didn't have to glue the legs to hold its own weight. The arms, however, especially the right arm, or was that the left? We'll remember when we get there. I'm actually recording the audio after this because, well, long story short, I've been working extra. I'm not going to go into details about what, but I work medical, and I work at 2 facilities, and long story short, I've been pulling extra hours, so when my wife and I's anniversary rolls around, that I can do something nice for her. Because she puts up with my bull crap every day and deserves it. And since you're watching that, love you. Anyway, and I'm not going to complain even if my number one fan is my wife. So, the problem is, so this is actually a clever idea, utilizing the hollow space in the leg to cut down on weight so it doesn't have to support as much weight. The problem with that is the legs are where you want a lot of weight, so it'll push the center of gravity down. It'll keep its center of gravity low. That's why high-end action figures often have die-cast metal feet. Well, I shouldn't say that because SH Figuarts no longer does the die-cast metal feet that I'm aware of. But for a while they would do that. They would have die-cast metal feet to help weigh the figure down in standing postures. And again, this is such an interesting designed kit, because it actually is relatively seamless. And so now we'll move on to working on the knee and the knee pad. Now, this is one of the another thing I do not like. I do not like floating pieces. And when I say a floating piece, I mean a piece that's essentially not attached to truly attached to something. Because you can see it, there's two pegs, and eventually it does peg into something, but right here it's just floating. So we'll bring in this gray piece, which it does attach to, and you can see there's a peg that goes in the slot up top, and then two slots that the slots on the floating piece itself will go into. The problem being, because it's a floating piece, that there's not really anything holding it together. So right here I have a gap. And so I'm just going to screw around with it until the gap is gone. Not the end of the world, and I did find a workaround by just going ahead and mounting it there, which in all honesty is much better than what the instructions said. And am I being a jerk saying this? Probably, but I'm going to count that as an error in the instructions. We've jumped ahead to after I've gotten it all straightened out. And I do appreciate how they handled color breakup, using pieces for larger sections of color breakup. And this will be important later because I did have an extra video that I was going to show, but just due to poor quality of the product, I'm sorry, I'm not taking the blame for that one. This includes water transfer decals or decals, however you want to pronounce it. I've always heard it pronounced decal. So I am not taking the blame. Those are some of the worst quality water transfers I have ever interacted with. And with the sheer number of Bandai kits and Kotobukiya kits, as well as Revell and others I have built throughout my life, I can say with absolute certainty, maybe my technique wasn't great, but those were horrible. And so eventually I'm going to paint them, but we'll worry about that later. Okay. So, moving on, let's talk about Xabungle. So, Xabungle takes place in a post-apocalyptic future on a planet called Zora that turns out to be the Earth. The planet is ruled by people called the Innocent that live in domed cities. And generally, and I believe it's because they can't survive in the outside world. Because I guess the nuclear war tainted the land or something. Actually gives me kind of a Fallout vibe with the Vault Dwellers. Anyway, so the Innocent, the people who live outside the dome will trade labor, food, and other things for the Innocent, and the Innocent will often trade with them for technology, medicine, and other things. And this includes walker machines. So the premise of the show predicates on the law of the innocent. Basically, you have 3 days to get justice for any crime, and if you don't exact it within 3 days, then you're no longer entitled to it. And so Jiren Amos, the main character, his parents were murdered. And because of this, he's been chasing their murderer for over 10 days. So, eventually he runs across a group of traders who've acquired a brand new walker machine, Xabungle, and he decides to steal it for 3 days to use it to get his revenge on the person who killed his parents. He eventually is aided by a group called the Sand Rats who want to steal a Xabungle and sell it. And I believe it's the man who killed his parents is named Temp. And so in the process of stealing the Xabungle, he eventually helps out the Xabungle's owners, I believe it's the Cargo family, or Carrying. A lot of the names as I know them are incorrect because I remember a lot of them from the fans translated Super Robot Wars Alpha Guide. So, most of the show focuses on the crew of the land ship Iron Gear, Jiren included, as they battle various foes, not only to get revenge on Temp, but also just to survive in this world. And then they get drawn into a war with the Innocent. And then some other stuff happens, but I'm not going to go into super deep details because, I mean, you should watch the show. It's actually really good. So, that aside, the characters are interesting because, at least in its structure, Xabungle reminds me a lot of Kill la Kill, if you've seen that. Kill la Kill started out, in my opinion, as a parody anime, and over time it took itself more seriously. And Xabungle did the same thing because Jiren, one of his things he does, like the guy calls Jiren Melonhead, and then they superimpose a picture of a watermelon over his face. And then they include jokes like that, and then they also further add to the humor in parody as Jiren declares his Xabungle punch and Xabungle kick references to other to the super robots, your Mazingers and whatnot, with their various named attacks. And I guess maybe Robo, but this might be before Robo. I'd have to look that one up, but I'm not going to because I've looked up enough stuff. But the mech designs in Xabungle are fascinating because they're very unique. With the exception of Xabungle, Walker Gallier, and the Brocaris, most of the in the Iron Gear type land ships, most of the mechs do not resemble human beings. Like, there's some that'll have multiple cockpits, they'll have gun turrets on the outside, they'll have asymmetric hands, like you'll have one hand, they'll have a hand that's like a flamethrower and the other that's like a claw. And the designs are very unusual, but I guess in that Mad Max sort of way where they're actually really interesting to look at. And I will go ahead and just say this. I'm going to say something hypocritical. As much as I dislike this build, if Hasegawa makes Walker Gallier, which is Jiren's mech after he ruins his Xabungle, then I will buy that Walker Gallier. I will suffer building it, and I will record myself doing it just for your entertainment. So now we've got the the leg itself and the foot done. Next we're going to do the wing. And the attention to detail on this is the best praise I'm going to give this kit, because the camera washes it out, but there's a lot of good molded detail. Now, there was a cut there because I was trying to get the pieces separated to clean up the plastic a bit. Again, I've been spoiled by Bandai and it warning you about the undergated parts. Now, the plastic itself is actually quite nice. It's not brittle, but it's not gummy either. So this actually feels really nice to the touch. It doesn't feel like it's going to disintegrate, even if the actual build quality of it isn't that great. And I have to give credit to Hasegawa because, like I said, attention to detail. So this piece that plugs into that front part of the wing has a bunch of molded detail just so there's no blank flat surface. So even the wing is appealing to look at, and if you're so inclined, you could give that a good black wash and bring all those details out. So we put on these little caps just to finish the look of it. And then we're going to... And now we just got to finish the cover, the knee cover. And I'm open to nominations for an award for my award-winning camera work because honestly, at this point, I don't know what's going on with my camera work. So I'm going to apologize, but say that I filmed this much better on the other leg. Now, this is another thing I do not like. Basically, when you put this together, there's nothing to really hold that polycap in place. So right there, I cut out about 3 minutes of me putting that piece in, only for it to fall out as I try to assemble the piece, no matter how flat I leave it on the table. So what I did is I just put a dab of glue on one side just to hold it in tight enough for us to finish. And so we're going to finish building the leg. As we can see, it has a double jointed knee, so it's got good articulation. And again, I promise better camera work in the next episode. Put the foot on the ball peg, and then the front cover, what you're going to do is the front of it, you want to go ahead and put down into that gap in the foot, peg it onto that barbell piece, and then the wing will just go in the 2 slots on the side of the leg. So we're going to peg that in, and there we go. So there's Xabungle's right leg all complete. So we've got the foot has good motion. Like I said, I normally don't dwell on articulation, so I'll let the video go out on its own. Thanks for watching. Check out my fantasy story on Fiction Press. Chapter 6 should be live sometime soon.